Oh, I'm going to tell you how I fix stuff. So today we're going to do a cosmetic restoration on this Comptometer Model A. I made a video a while ago now doing one on a Model C Lite, which was in pretty bad shape, but not as bad as this. This has got a lot more scaly type rust on it. So what I did on that one is took it all apart, took all the keys out, took this top plate off, sanded it, primed and painted it with copper metallic paint, and then went over it with a lightish coat of brownish lacquer. I think it was medium walnut or something. And it didn't match exactly the original finish, but it made it look a lot better than it did, and this is gonna look a lot better than how it looks now. You'll notice that the front piece is missing here, and that's because I went ahead and did that first, just to get that out of the way, since that's the hardest part. Because, and you can see here what it's going to look like in the end, which, again, that's not a perfect match for the original color, but, it's a lot better than what it looks like now. So, the reason I did this first is because all of these are riveted in, and you got these little tiny rivets in between them. You notice that some of these aren't staying in as far as I would like, so I'm going to have to find some better way of holding them in. Unfortunately, some of these, so the way that, I'm not sure exactly how they installed these in-between rivets here, but it almost looks like they put them through and then flattened the ends out once they were through. I don't have any way to do that. The easiest way would be to heat them and squash them, but that's going to mess up the new paint. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what they did there. If I do this again, I would probably just get new rivets out of like lead, so that I can just put them through and then squash them. But we'll see how this works. Most of them are staying through. Some of them are not staying in as far as I would like. So I might have to find out some other solution. Using those lead rivets, but these rivets are important not only because they hold on this material on the back, but also they serve as the stops for these decimal points. So these things are somewhat balanced, where they got this big head on them, so that it's kind of an over-center thing. So when you put them down, they'll stay down, and you swing them back up, they'll stay up. So without these here, they might not necessarily stop where they're supposed to. These rivets were kind of annoying too. Originally they were put in and then either pounded completely flat or ground completely flat. So when I pounded them out and then put them back in, there wasn't enough material left on them to kind of flatten them back over to hold them in. So I ended up just putting some epoxy on the back of them, and we'll see how that goes. So far they're in there for now. This one, the end's a little bit questionable. You can see it's rotating the rivet itself when I move the decimal point. So if that one falls off, I'll just have to peel this back a little bit on the back. You can see the piece broke out here, so I'll have to glue that back in, but you can see some of the epoxy down in there, the yellow stuff. But if that one falls out, I'll just peel this back a little bit and see if I can re-epoxy it back in. But yeah, you can see that one is going a bit above its rivet, so yeah, I might need something else to hold these in, glue or something. We'll have to see. Now once this is in and tightened down, I believe that these frame members here will put some positive force on that dampening material, which I think is just like a sound deadener. As you can tell, but it's all filled in here too. The whole case is full of it. I think this stuff is cork. That stuff I think is like either burlap and tar, or burlap and tar mixed with cork or something like that, kind of, just to deaden the sound a little bit. You'd be kind of tempted to just leave that out and ignore those rivets, but then your decimal points might not, stay where they're supposed to. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I'm confident enough that I'll get something workable with that. Whether I have to, whether when I put it on these frame members, we'll put enough pressure on it to hold it in, or hold it in farther than it is, because it is held in. It's just some of the rivets aren't in as far as they should be. So we'll see if I put this back on, if these frame members push it in far enough that those rivets stick out as far as they should. Or I'll have to use my idea and see if I can make some out of lead somehow, just to, because it doesn't need much pressure to hold it in. But anyway, we'll see about that when we put the whole thing back together. But like I said, for now at least I'm confident enough in that it's going to come out in some workable fashion, that I'm going to move on to the rest of this. Now, I think I mentioned in a previous video, I think on my video about all the comptometers, I did go through this whole register section in here. When I first got this, I think at least half, or maybe a little bit more than half, of the register was all rusted up. And so bad that sometimes some of these pieces wouldn't even move. These are all, spring loaded, as you can see. So, I ended up just taking the whole register all apart, soaking everything except for these digit wheels in evaporest. These ones, I soaked half, like I filled a cup with a little bit of evaporest, just enough to cover the gears on either side, and then just put it in there so that the evaporest wouldn't get on the digits. And although evaporest really only works well when the whole thing is submerged, it actually did work well enough to remove the little bit of rust that was on those geared parts. So it's a lot better now than it was. It's still not 100% perfect. It doesn't always clear right all the way. And something that I do have to address at some point is these things do not work properly. Let's see if we put a number in here. So that time I did clear out, which is good. I think when I did my all Comptometer video, it was misbehaving that day, of course. Everything always gets stage fright. But anyway, the issue with these things is, so what these are a carry inhibit. So when you do subtraction, basically you're adding a number such that the number you add results in one less than, or not one less, it results in the number you want to subtract less than what's in the current register with a carry all the way off the end. So for example, if you had, say, we'll do 46, and I want to subtract 3, what I'm going to do is add a number such that, so the result we want is 43, if you subtract 3 from 46, I'll add a number such that I get 143, and if I ignore the 100, I get my 43, which is the result. Now, to ignore the 100, you have two options. One option being you can add 9 in every other column so that the 100 walks all the way off the end of the register, except for this column because you can't add anything directly in that column. Or you can just ignore the carry, which is what these do. So these plungers here will prevent that 1 from carrying over. So, let's see, to subtract 3 from this, I want to use the small 3 less 1. So the small 3 is on a 6, less 1 is on the 2. And I'm going to, in this case, because the number I'm subtracting is less than the digit in this column, I can use this carry inhibit. If I hold that in and then push this, I now have 43. So I've subtracted 3. The issue is, not sure if you can see down in there, but these, see how this guy is resting on that little catch there? This guy is not. So, see now it is. I poked it a little bit, now it flipped back up. So, that only happens, well, usually only happens, sometimes it happens during clearing too, but usually it only happens, actually it has happened during clearing, because you can see this one did not reset either. That one's actually kind of messed up. I have to figure out what's going on. Oh, there it went. I have to figure out what happened there. Anyway, sometimes it happens during clearing, which I think is what caused that one, and it almost always happens when using these carry inhibits. So I think the issue is the springs that are in there are just not correct. When I rebuilt this, a good number of the springs were either rusted in half or they had broken at some point and then somebody stretched them to, just wherever they had broken off, they just bent another ring over to make something to hook on and then stretched the spring out to hook it on. So it was not the correct tension. So all the way down in the bottom, there's a set of springs too, and almost all those are replaced. The ones on the top, I may do with whatever springs that seem serviceable, that seem that they would work, because the springs I use down in the bottom are thicker and they fit down in the bottom. I wouldn't say thicker, they have a wider coil. And they seem to be working okay down in the bottom, but they would not fit in between this little gap. Or even in frame. They would not fit in between this little gap here. So I had to use what seemed to be the most serviceable of the original springs on the top, so they would fit in that gap. So probably at some point I should see if I can find the appropriate springs and replace all the ones on the top too, because like you can see, this one here looks pretty overstretched. This one has a little, pinch or something there where it's stretched over in that one spot. So that's probably part of it. Another part of it is most of these springs on the top used to be springs that were down on the bottom, because most of the bottom springs were okay and most of the top springs were the ones that had rusted. So they may not even be the correct tension if they were different springs used originally. But anyway, I'm not sure if we're going to get into that in this video or not, but I just want to get a little bit of the background here. And you can see this did not work properly, so that has to be, yeah, so that did not reset, so that has to be figured out. I probably want to at least adjust that in this video, because I want this machine to work clear reliably and at least add reliably, and I might worry about these some other day. But anyway, first order of business is going to be taking the whole thing apart. So we'll start by removing the crank on the side here. Sometimes these cranks can be really stuck on, but of course I've had this one off recently, so it comes off pretty easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my repainted piece off to the side before I bump into it, like I just bumped into my tripod. Hopefully get that out of harm's way. I will also have to make I'm going to make something out of plexiglass to go over here. There's supposed to be frosted glass in that as a register cover. And of course, most of the time those are broken. I got 4 screws on the bottom. It's pretty much the same case design, all the way up to like the Model M. The only difference with the Model A case is is the register cover basically. Instead of the glass on this model, all the other models had that lazy S-type front. Starting with the Model H, the front is a little bit wider, like it sticks out a little bit further, but the actual design of the case is basically the same. So those 4 out of the bottom should be able to lift this up out of here if it's going to cooperate. Sometimes these get sort of stuck. And we're stuck on the stub of the crank handle. So that comes out. And there you can see the whole register assembly. So if you've worked on any of these comptometers before, you'll notice that this is a striking difference in comparison to anything else. Because this model has the register a lot lower than anything else. On later models, they had a couple of intermediate wheels that took the drive all the way up to right about up here, so that the top of the register was about level with the top of this plate here. But in the Model A, it's way down in the machine, and of course they just had the glass over the top. So yeah, significantly different from anything else that came after. Well, basically the mechanism is similar. The actual height and everything is different. So I start with the case over here. I guess I'll get this taken apart and get out of the way, because we need some space to take apart the actual mechanism, get all the keys out, get the top plate off. So the case has these little guys right here in the side. On here, some of them are looking kind of rusty, so hopefully they'll all come out. They're kind of hard to get at because I see these little I need a different screwdriver, I think. Fight with those, but oh, now it's coming. I'm not sure what kind of screwdriver they use to put these in, but they're not the most convenient to get at because they only have this little cutout in the cork to get at them. I think we're missing one. Oh no, we're not. The cork just squashed over on top of it. Can't get it out there. Or just focus. Little screws like that. So probably need to watch me struggle with getting all of them out, but take all of them out, and then that will allow the base to come off the sides, and then the sides are held to each other by screws in the corners. You can see this corner here is kind of bent up, so I did bend it back a little bit when I was working on this before, but now that I'm taking the whole case apart, I'll see if I can get it completely straightened out, and hopefully it will look okay in the end. So yeah, I'm probably going to fight with the rest of these, and we will come back when the base is ready to come off. Okay, so got all those out. A couple were missing. There was one missing here and one missing there, and some of the ones on this side were loose. So I don't know if they're stripped or just worked loose over the years or what, but they should come off. It comes right off. And so there's that. So this base, let's see, it looks pretty rusty. I'm not sure if that's actually rust on the base or just dirt or rust from the front panel. This is actually chrome plated or nickel plated or some kind of plated. The side looks pretty good actually, on this exposed part. Looks pretty decent. The front's got a little rust patch here, a little bit there. Frame, rust patch there, some there. This side, losing something, probably just dirt. This side, not too bad, and back is not too bad. And you can see here the impressions, so that's how they get stuck. The actual machine gets pushed into this cork and then it kind of sticks there sometimes. So that'll get cleaned up, and I don't think I'm going to do anything with it other than just clean it up. Sure, there's a little bit of rust spots here and there, but I don't think it is a big enough deal to try and repaint that with chrome or silver paint or something. I think it'll be okay the way that it is. Because I want to get most of the main scaly type rust off of here. So we got these screws in the corners here, see if we can, not that way or not. Oh, maybe I can anyway. We can get these out of here. But so now, because this side is bent in, there might be some damage or tension on these screws. So this one is tuning, but I think it's stripped because it's not actually coming out. So I have to pause again and fight with these a little bit. This one. That one might be coming out. Machine has not had an easy life. I'm sure you can see how rusty that is. It's like clouds of rust in the threads, so that's not good. Try this again. I think this is stripped, so you have to. I don't know, maybe it's coming out now. Yeah, the threads don't look so hot though. Have to see about that. Try this side again, maybe. Try the bottom one. Just the slots are clogged too. It's not helping matters. Alright, I think I'm gonna have to pause the camera and fight with these for a little bit because they're not. Okay, let's try the back ones. The back ones have 3 on each side. So that one's coming out. So the sides of these are not too bad, really. If the top was in the same condition as these sides, I might have just left it alone. But I really don't like the real scaly rust on the top. It really kind of bothers me, so that's why I'm doing this. Now the other machine which I did, the Model C Lite, I think was in similar-ish state to the sides on this. Wasn't really any scaly rust, but of course that one's going to fight me now. The reason I did that one, even though there wasn't any scaly rust, was as an experiment to see how it was going to go. In case it messed up, I didn't want to mess up the Model A, but since it came out okay in the end, it looked halfway decent. Looked better than when it started. That's why I decided to go ahead and do this one. So with those 3 out, we should at least be able to possibly get. So that slides out. How's the front doing? What's the slide on the bottom? There we go. Come on. Alright, so let's see there. Fine. Far enough away. That's the. So I think it's got this cork padding here. I don't think that's cork. It's cork on the later one. It looks like cork on this one. Of course, that's the outside pattern. So yeah, like I said, not really any scaly rust on here. It's just really dark. So if the whole thing had been like that, I probably would have just left it alone. But because there's so much scaly rust on the top, that's what bothers me. We can get these ones out. Let me set this crank out of the way too before that gets messed up. Get these 3 out. We can take the back off and get that out of the way, and then just have to fight with those 2 on the front corner. That one came out nicely. If I did the Model C, these all come out pretty nice, and I just scratched it, but that's okay because we'll be painting it. So I think I mentioned before, but the way these were done originally is pretty similar to the way that I'm doing the repaint. They're steel panels, and then they were copper plated, and then they were brown lacquer sprayed over top of that. So that's what I'm trying to replicate here. Obviously I'm using copper metallic paint instead of copper plating, but it came out okay on the other one. So yeah, that's the back. Just a simple pattern there with the rounded corners. As you can see, no pattern. So we're just down to these. Actually, what else we can do is take these out. These are the, maybe we can. This one's loose, see if I can take that out. So you can see these hold on this metal plate on the inside, which is holding on some of this dampening stuff. So we'll take those out, and then that should just make it somewhat easier to paint. Have that dampening stuff on the inside. So these here are what hold down the, are supposed to hold down the glass plate. Let me see if I can get this one here. This one's pretty stiff. So these are probably at least, remove the rust off of. If I can get them somewhat shiny, maybe put a light coating of oil on them to prevent them from rusting again. Because once you've got these set with the glass in there, you really shouldn't have to mess with them. So, it's not like these are not like a normal use part of the machine where you'd be getting oil on yourself when you're trying to use the machine. Looks like these were hiding some screws. Okay, so I always wondered about that. I didn't always wonder about it. It's something that I realize now, but the later models like the B and the C, sometimes you get a front plate that's plain, sometimes they have a front plate with 4 screws in it. I just assumed that the 4 screws in that plate were the screw here, and then they just filled the hole that this thumb screw is in with another screw, but it's actually not the case. See, when we take these off, there's another screw behind there, so interesting actually. These front plates for the Model A then actually have 6 holes in the front here. Not counting the ones on the side, it's just in the front, and the four screw panels for the B and C, they just didn't drill these 2 top holes. Interesting. So with that out of the way, see, this comes out, and this is the same kind of stuff that's behind the little strip panel in the front. Looks like this is just a bullet backing for the cork. You can see the cork here. A little chunk of it missing there. You can see it's just under the bullet. But so that'll just get set off to the side, and we're not going to do anything with that. Maybe clean a little of the dirt off of it, but other than that, you can see how rusty everything is. So probably see if we can clean some of that up so it doesn't, keep rusting. I mean, it's probably going to take, hundreds of years to rust through, but still, don't want that to happen. You can see how rusty these screws are, so no wonder they're stuck. So I'm going to fight with those screws a little bit, and then once this is all apart, we should be ready to disassemble the actual rest of the mechanism. Alright, so as you can see, I was able to get those 2 screws out of there. Just kind of put some oil on them and worked them back and forth, and eventually they came out. So I think all these rusty parts, thumb screws and the other screws, are just going to soak some evaporust and obviously give these a good cleaning with all the rusty crust coming off of there. This has actually has some crusty rust under there. I didn't even notice that was behind the cover detents, or cover retainers, I should say. So I'll set those out of the way. I've got a nice pile of rust on my table here. So let me put down paper towels to hold the keys so they don't get all dirty. And these are some of the other parts. So these are the screws that hold down that cover I already painted. And you can kind of see, like right there, that spring, that's kind of what the springs in there looked like. The ones that were up in the register. Some of them were broken in half. I saved the ones that, looked like they could possibly be of some use if, in an emergency. I don't know why I saved those, honestly. Not going to be any useful for anything, but anyway, they are there. That's useful as an example of how bad things were. So, let's see, in frame here. Let's back up a little bit. Make sure I'm actually recording. And now we can flip this over. Quite easy, you just flip it right over. And now we work from this side. No, we work from this side over. So I'm going to show this in another video, but these pieces, you can see this one latches in here, and then it comes up over the top here, and then this one's underneath that. So it's the easiest to everything's in frame there. This tripod is messed up. Anyway, so let's just take off this, well, right off. You have to push the key up a little bit and then just kind of work this out of here like that. So these shouldn't matter how they go back in. Actually, I'm noticing, interesting. So I just noticed a difference between this and the later ones. I'll have to check the Model B and see if it's the same way, but you can see this has this spring, goes in like this, and then sits kind of down in there like that, and then is held in kind of like that. Now on the later models, at least on the Model C, where I took that one apart, that has a little metal tab here that goes through the center of the spring to kind of hold it like this. And see, this doesn't have that, so that's why the spring popped out right away, because there's nothing to hold it in like that. So that's interesting. I did not know they made that change. Probably going to try and keep these in order, even though I don't think it matters, but shouldn't hurt to try and do so. So yeah, it's interesting to note that. Make sure that you don't let any of these other ones fly across the room. Spring hunting today. So I'm going to take all these off, and you can see, so now, like once I've got those two off, I'm able to take this one off, tap one in that column, and then just kind of work your way across. So if you want to, go column or row by row, take off all the top row and then take off all the next row, you can do that, or you can take off all of the, that spring won't even, okay, I'm putting it in the wrong hole. Or you can go column by column. Actually, really inconvenient. Now that I look at this, that missing tab there to hold these springs is actually making this a lot more inconvenient to take apart. So I can see why they added that. Probably saved their factory workers a lot of time hunting for springs on the factory floor, if they even did that, or if they just grabbed the new one out of the box. I wonder how parts were packaged. 1904. Plastic wasn't even really a thing back then. So I guess everything just showed up in a cardboard box. Must be nice. We're trying to fight through 15 layers of plastic packaging. You get it what you want, but anyway. Of course, nothing manufactured today comes apart this easy anyway. Everything's just all. Don't want you to take it apart. I'm trying to take it one of those Keurig coffee machines. I'm not going to get very far. But anyway, so I'm probably going to pause the camera while it's going to struggle a little bit while I take this apart. Because it's just a repetitive process, so once you got the idea of one, you got the idea of all of them. It's just knowing that, and you can look at it and see, well, this one's trapped under here, so better start from this side where it's not trapped, but pretty simple. The most complicated part of these machines is the register, and even on these Model A's, it's not that complicated. Like I said, I rebuilt the register on this. Not that complicated at all. And even on this one, not sure if I will be able to show it, but you can kind of see down here. So you can kind of see down in here the springs that are replaced. That one, I should do a better job of that one. That one's kind of stretched out, but you can see down there and there and there. So you can see how much thicker those are than the ones on the top, and that's why I had to use the original ones on the top. I didn't have, this one seems twice as tensioned as the others. That's interesting. That was a replacement or something. Anyway, like I said, I didn't have small enough springs at the time to replace one on the top, so I should probably look into that and see if that resolves my issue with the carrying inhibits. So the bottom of these keystones, I'll probably show this once I have them all out. So I can probably pull the ones in the, where's calling out? Dropped it. Where are my tweeted pliers? where the key stems have a little kind of hook to them on the bottom. So that's how you have to lift these out. See if I can pull one real quick. You can see how they have that hook there on the bottom. So when you take it off, you kind of have to lock it to the side to get over that hook. Like I said, not really complicated at all. And then them foot you a little bit, like these ones are for some reason. This particular column is twice as difficult as the other two. Interesting, but so let me go through and do this, and then we should be ready to pull all the keys. And then once all the keys are off, then we can take off that top cover. It's kind of backwards from the way you'd expect a machine to come apart. Most of the machines, you pull all the keycaps off, but I don't think the keycaps on Comptometer keys ever come off in one piece anyway. As far as I understand, the only option is to replace the whole key stem, based on these early ones. And these keycaps here are not cellular either. There's some kind of other, I think they call it composition plastic, but I have no idea what that actually means. It does look like the way that they made them, they took a bunch of little grains and kind of compressed them together into one solid piece in the shape they wanted. But I have no idea what those grains are actually made out of. I don't think you can do that with celluloid. I'm pretty sure they're not celluloid. I don't know what they actually are. Oh. You have to lift the key up a little bit so you can get enough twist on this to get it around the end of that hook. Okay, so let me pause that and I'll continue with this, and we will come back when it's done. Alright, so with all those removed, we should be able to basically just maybe wiggle these up out of here. It's never the smoothest operation removing these. I have to wiggle them side to side because they have to work past all these tabs and everything. So kind of wiggle it around and kind of come up through maybe this one. There we go. Because these held too close together, sometimes they get stuck. This one isn't able to slide over enough on the top, because basically this one has to slide over right away as soon as this lip passes it in order for this one to get up. So something that gets a little bit stuck there. I have to work with it. This is my missing key, unfortunately. I was thinking about changing this. Well, first I think about changing this with my Model C original, since they use the same key stems. But unfortunately, my Model C original has some kind of coating applied to the keycaps. So even though they're constructed the same, or the same kind of plastic, I should say, that extra coating means that they don't actually match. So I'm having second thoughts about that. I was also thinking about maybe switching it with, one of these in the lesser used columns, but I don't know. There's one machine you will never find parts for. And there are really no parts machines for this either, because, things are so rare that almost anything is worth fixing, as you can see by what I'm doing here. Like I said, this machine, you can see the rust on these. When I got this machine, the register was practically rusted in place. And just by the cosmetic state of it, it's a pretty sad example, but it's such a rare machine, you have to take what you can get and try and make it work. So that's what we are going to do. And as you've seen before, it does pretty much mostly work. Just gotta get make the clearing reliable. Like I said, that one column that was kind of getting stuck there, gotta take a look into that. And then figure out about the carry inhibits. But all those things are not really related to this. I mean, I can do this cosmetic job and then dig into all that stuff later. And that wouldn't mess this up in any way because all that stuff's in the register and you can take the register apart without taking all these out. So once the cosmetic stuff is done, I can put this all back together and then just deal with the register on its own. I'll probably even deal with some of the stuff when it's apart. The clearing, at least, should work without the keys installed. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry, maybe I'll fiddle around with that one column that was giving an issue with clearing and see if I can get that to work reliably. Because I think when I first rebuilt the register, did the evaporest and everything, it was working reliably, so I'm not sure why it's causing an issue now, but it's maybe a little bit violent, but it's not. You're just kind of wiggling them back and forth until they come on up out. It's really not too bad. See how much dirt is in here too, and this one looks bent. I have to straighten that out. I wonder, how far these went for, routine maintenance, because I'm not sure if they oiled, all the way down these key stems each time, but you have to take all these out. Really clean them and oil them, so I'm sure they would have done this in the field, or the field maintenance was just, squish them all down the oil holes and that was all you got. This model doesn't have very many oil holes. Of course, most of the oil holes, like on the Model C Lite, are on the register cover. Well, this one you can just pull the glass cover right off with those two thumb screws. So, as far as oiling the actual, key stems and the levers they interact with, I'm not sure how much they would have done of that originally, but alright, so the three screws that were here would hold that front cover on, so that's why those are already removed. So I just have to take these out. I can find where I put my screwdriver, that is. There it is. Actually, before I do that, I'll take this off, in case these screws fight me. That one's not. That one's not. Okay. Take this off too. Under there it looks pretty bad. That's not the original color either. This whole thing is warped actually. You can see how it popped up like that. How it's all in. That's interesting. I don't know if that's anything to do with the damage on the front corner, if that, but this just comes right off now, and that's duty. Yeah, so that just comes right off. You can see it's got the cork plate on the bottom. Of course, these are the two hold downs for the two washers, I guess, that the patent pipe screws go into, and then these are just riveted on. They hold on that cork thing. It's actually, look how beat up the front of it is. Interesting. If I can move that back down or something. Yeah, the whole thing is, I'm sure it's going to pick up on camera, but The whole thing is warped actually. Yeah, that's gonna. Yeah, you can kind of see if I hold that right on the back. Well, maybe not. It's not gonna show, but yeah, the whole plate is warped. Actually, it's interesting. See it? Kind of pops either way. So anyway, this is the stuff that we want to get rid of, and you see it's all scattered all over the place. So I will start on sanding down, cleaning up all these plates, getting them ready for paint. Also go through, you can see how dirty everything is down in there. See about cleaning that all up. Alright, let's probably we'll take a look at the clearing mechanism, because that ratchets these things up and down, get them all to. So basically, the way that it works is each of these wheels. Show this on that side or that side, but one of the side of the digits wheel has a little peg on it, and then there's a little hook that comes in. I think it's this guy. So you can kind of see if you can see it there or not. Right down in there. And you can see that now that hook comes in. That will hit a peg on the back of this wheel. So basically this just adds one repeatedly, and then when it gets to that hook, it'll stop. It's stopped on the carry, but so when that comes around to that hook, it'll stop there and stay there no matter how many times you push this down, because it can't pop back up. So basically that hook makes sure that all of these get to 9, and this one gets to 10, I think. No, all of these stop at 8. This one stops at 9. So that way when the hooks release and all these are allowed to pop to their full height, these will all add 1 to those, making all of these 9. This will add 1 to it, making it roll over, and then the carries all the way across. So, yeah. That's why clearing interacts with these carry pieces here, because it has to carry all the way across to finish out the clear. Kind of interesting way of doing it. It's completely different from anything else I can think of. The pinwheel machines all used either fingers or marching, especially when you use ball bearings on the inside of the wheel. So when you rotate this shaft, then that finger will hit a peg inside the wheel and drag it to 0. Or in the case of marching, the ball bearing hits a peg and drags it to 0. Like the arithmometer had an extra set of teeth on the wheels with one tooth missing, and they had a rack that would slide past, and then that when it got to the missing tooth, of course that would be 0, so the wheel would stop there because there's nothing more driving it. That's the missing tooth. Of course, those are different than this, because these wheels are aligned, longitudinally or vertically, however you want to call it. I should say vertically because the wheel's upright, so that's vertical. And the arithmometer, the wheels are horizontal, and the numbers are on the face of the wheel. So that's why they were allowed to get a rack that would all across. But yeah, anyway, Comptometer actually had, 4 different unique clearing mechanisms throughout their lifetime, because the original wooden machines did actually have a shaft that went through here, and you had a thumb wheel that you rotated, and that dragged all the wheels to 0. Then the Model A and the Model B had this style, where it pushes everything up to 8 or 9, and then has a ripple carry all the way across. The Model C was based on that same idea, but it didn't use the same add 1 every time. It had a different mechanism to move the wheels up to their stops. And of course with the Model H, they came out with the single action clearing, which I think had a spring type action where when you pulled the clear, all the wheels would spring back to 0. I haven't looked too much into how that works, but yeah. Anyway, it's kind of interesting the way that they cleared these out, different from anything else. But so yeah, next is on to cleaning and painting, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so as you can see, got this all cleaned up. It's always surprising, how much copper plating is left on here. I mean, look at some of these places, how badly pitted it is. Kind of surprising. So there's a couple places that have some bad pitting. I'm going to use a filler primer on this, try and fill those in. Probably gonna take a couple coats. We'll sand it, and hopefully it will be nice and smooth. The little front tab part that I showed earlier also has some pitting on it. Not as severe as this, but it did have some. And a couple coats of primer and some sanding on that, and you wouldn't really notice it now. So hopefully this will come out just as good. Sanded this down. Use the wire brush on the deep pits here, trying to get all the rust out of on there. I think I got maybe a little tiny bit left in some of those craters, but we're just gonna have to go with it as it is. Maybe do a little tiny bit more brushing, but it's not gonna be perfect, obviously. But hopefully, there'll at least be enough there. There's some pretty deep pits, so the primer should certainly grab onto that. There's a little bit more brushing I'm gonna do. There's still a little bit of rust. See it like down in that one there. It's a little bit orange down there, so I can get that out of there. But yeah, it's really surprising, how much of this copper plating is left given the state that it's in. But anyway, hopefully next time you see this, it will have some primer on it. Alright, so as you can see, I have cleaned up down in there. There was a whole bunch of dirt down in there on those rails at the bottom, so cleaned all that up. Put a light coating of oil on to prevent rust. This was there's rust in some other parts of this machine. There was rust, a bunch of rust in the register. I don't want to risk that spreading. So that's a lot better. Not that anything really rides on there, but it's kind of bothering me that they were so dirty. So other than that, I have been cleaning up the keys, and actually the keys cleaned up pretty well. You can see how the sides of the keys are all white again. They were pretty dirty before, and surprisingly they actually cleaned up pretty decently. So that's good. Got this all laid out so that hopefully they don't get oil on the nice clean sections. So these ones are all stacked up, so I'll clean those when I put it back on because I don't have to scrub them as hard as the white ones. But yeah, so that was pretty good so far. We have this, which is painted. We get that whole thing in frame there. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, and I'm fine with that. My goal isn't to get something to look like it's brand new. My goal is to get something that looks like it didn't come from the Titanic. So there's some blemishes here and there. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it's almost like it cracked somehow. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I'm going to leave it. It looks old, and it should look old. Not to say that, I intentionally mess up the paint. I'm just not very good at painting. But in this case, being not very good at painting was out of my favor, because it looks old, which is good, which is fine. It will look a lot better than it looked before, and that is good enough for me. So put that back on there. I have to screw it down, get it seated. There's these little holes in here that some pins go through, so get all that lined up and screw it back down. And then I'll start reinstalling the keys. I'm not going to videotape reinstalling the keys because we're going to have to go a lot slower putting them back in than I did taking them out, so it's going to be just a very boring video. So, yeah, like I said, it's not perfect, and I'm okay with that. I could have done a little bit better job of painting. A little rough spot there, not quite sure what the deal is there, but like I said, it's going to look old, and it should. So, I'm okay with that. Yeah, so let me put this back on and start reinstalling the keys, and then we'll come back and I'll show the rest of the case, which I've also painted. I think I ended up making this a little bit darker than the rest of the case. That wasn't intentional, but again, it'll be okay. like I said, we're not going to make this perfect. And I can show you my Comptometer Model B. Not everything exactly matches there, and that's naturally aged, so yeah, it'll be fine. Looks old and it should look old. So let me put all of the keys back in, and then we can play with this a little bit and put the rest of the case back together. Something I do want to mention before putting this back together that I should have mentioned before is if you are working on one of these, you'll see that there is a pair of rocker pieces here, one there and then one here. This is the main drive one. These are the stops, so that when you push a key down, these activate locks that lock the main driver from going down too far. So for example, say you're pushing a 5 key and you're really excited and you push it really hard, theoretically you could give this shaft enough momentum to overshoot and click down more than 5 positions. And that's where these come in. As soon as the 5 key gets to the bottom of its stroke, it will activate this, which you can see drops this piece down here, and then this activates a lock that locks this from going down any further. So that's the point of those. And when you put this back together, you have to make sure that you get the key stems in between them, like that. So you can see that, actually probably goes more like that, but does it go? No, it does go this way. So you can see that there's a finger on either side of the key. One pushes on the main drive and one on the other side pushes on the lock. So you have to get those down in between there correctly, or otherwise these locks will fall off, or at least this one will fall off the end of the tab there, and then you won't get your locks, and then you'll be getting inaccurate results. Or even worse, depending on how these get intermixed, you even start jamming keys. If one key ends up on one side of one of them and the other key ends up on the other side, then it'll be kind of like pinching these sheet metal pieces here, kind of twisting them and jam things up. So yeah, just wanted to mention that when you're putting this back together, make sure that you get the key stems in between. So both of the thin locking levers go on the left side, and the thick main drive rocker goes on the right side. On this machine, it's going to be easier to see if you mess it up because the register is so low you can actually look in the front here and see where your key stems are relative to these. So you can see if one's like pushed over like that and that's wrong, whether it should be pushed over like that. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that if you're putting this out here, then make sure that you put that in between there, and that you don't mix it up and that'll just cause issues. Alright, so all the keys are back in. You can see most of them clean up pretty well. This one's still a bit dirty, so is this one. Some of the black ones didn't clean up that well either, so like the numbers on those aren't that white, but of course some of them are just worn right off. But anyway, so with this all back together now, we can give it a test. So might be inaccurate because I was hitting the table. My table's not flat, so we'll see if it's accurate or not. And see if it hits the table, then it might not be going down all the way. But it looks like it is accurate. 4 all 9s and a 5 is correct for the sum of pushing all the keys once. What happened to this one? Let's look into that. It's not coming up all the way. I'll look into that, but so it's accurate. Clearing, that still has a 5 in there. There we go. So now something that I've noticed sometimes, if there's a 5, it doesn't clear out. Now I don't know why that happens. What I have noticed is when there's a 5 in any of the columns, that means that the stop pin, but I'm not sure, I think I showed that there's a little tiny pin on the gear there. that will stop against a lever in clearing mode. It just so happens that if there's a 5 in any of the positions, that stop pin hits the stop lever at the very back of the stroke. And I think sometimes it slips past. I'm not really sure why. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that. I shouldn't have to take the keyboard back off though, so that's why I put that back on. If that's an issue, it's going to be up here in the register section, which we should be able to address with the keyboard on. So take a look into that, but otherwise it is accurate. And I'm going to take a look into this key, why it's stuck, whether there's just a little extra paint on that column or whether it's actually bent. See, it should be free like that, but it's not. So I'll take a look into that. Yeah, so other than that, you can see I've got the case here, and actually that thing with the paint, the cracks. So you can see how it cracked here, and there's some on the side too. I don't know why that happened. I think that's the lacquer that I used. It didn't do that before on any of the other comptometer, so I don't know why it's doing it here. But I'm going to leave it. I think it actually, gives it more of that old kind of look to see, cracks like that in the paint. Focus. So yeah, actually, I'm kind of glad that happened. Just kind of adds to the, the old look to it. So yeah, I got this all put back together. The way that I did this is, I think I showed before, I took everything off the base and took everything all apart, and then I cleaned it up, and then I primed it as separate pieces, and then I put it back together, just the outside without the bottom, and then painted it that way as one unit. That way, you get the screws and everything, and when you put it together, then you don't have to worry with the screws messing up the paint. So I think it turned out okay. It was a little bit difficult to screw back in. I think these panels are just a little bit distorted over the years. Of course, we got that bashed in corner here, which I got better. It's not perfect, but it's a little bit better. It's more round now instead of being kind of a flat edge on it. So not perfect, but it is improved. Between that and who knows what else happened to it over the years, I think it was a little bit distorted. So getting the screws lined up to put it back in the base was a bit difficult, but got them all in. Most of them actually are kind of stripped, so it's gonna probably be mostly this top panel pushing down on the sides is going to hold everything in, unfortunately, but that's just not really that surprising given the state they were everything all rusty in there. But I did put them in evaporust to clean them up, and they are cleaned up pretty well. But I think the holes in the, this is just folded over sheet metal, so those holes are kind of stripped a little bit on most of the screws, but I'm not worried about it falling apart. The screws, I don't assume that they're going to rattle out or anything. They just don't tighten this down to the base. And then when you put the top on, of course, the top is going to push down on here and hold that down. So, yeah, I think that'll be okay. So, yes, I have to figure out what is wrong with the sticky key. It adds, it just doesn't, the space between the lever and the top of the where it usually sits is, so I'll take a look into that. And then maybe take a look into the clearing thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to address that now because it does clear. It just takes a couple of tries sometimes. Who knows? And then issue related to part of those levers have rusted away, or who knows what. So maybe I'll address that now. Maybe I'll just put it back together and address that later. I'm not really sure, but yeah. Overall, I am satisfied with how it's coming along so far. I think it'll look a lot better than it was, but it won't look, brand new, which is just fine by me. So, and I will make a plexiglass cover for the register as well, just to have something there so it's not all open, and try to make it look like how it's supposed to look with the frosted look. So we'll see about that. Yeah, so far pretty satisfied. All right, let's see if I can actually get everything all in frame. I would know how to do this by now. So there it is, all back together. I think it came out okay. These are a little bit looser than I would like, but just how it's going to be. Ideally, those rivets should be remade and re-riveted in, but I don't have a machine shop, so we'll just have to live with that. If I decided to at some point redo that, it shouldn't be too bad. I should be able to just, do it there. I should be able to just pop those out because they're just epoxied in, so just, scrape the epoxy off and pop them out if I ever find a way to remake those rivets. Other than that, I think it's okay. This I'm going to have to figure out something else for. My idea was, this is a plexiglass, so I left the that coating on the bottom of it, the peel-off stuff. It's not as opaque as I kind of was thinking in my head, so that didn't quite work out. I did cut out, so my idea was to leave it on there and then cut out little windows around the numbers to peel off, which I did, but it's not as big of a difference as I was hoping for, so yeah, that'll have to be redone at some point. Also got a little scratch on the film there, so at least for now it's got a cover on it in the first time in who knows how many years, but yeah, I'll have to figure out something else for that. But anyway, overall, I am satisfied with that. I mentioned, but at some point I will have to replace the springs in there. I think that's gonna have to be done for the carrying handles to work properly, but this is kind of like a slow rolling project. When I first got this, I just kind of cleaned it up somewhat and got it kind of working, and then as time went on, it a little bit more, like I said before, I disassembled the entire register, evapor-rusted all the rusty stuff, got all the rust off, put it back together, and that got it 99% working. And replaced those springs in the bottom, not the springs on the top. I still have to replace those. And then now we did the paint job, so it looks better. And then there's still more stuff to do. Got to figure out something else for this register cover. Got to replace the springs on the top of the register for these to work properly. But and it's going to be for another day. I don't know why, but sometimes some projects, I just kind of work on them until they're 100% complete. But for some reason, this machine, I just feel like, I don't know, I just do small bursts of activity on it, I guess. Not really sure why. So yeah, this is good for the cosmetic restoration at least. Do a little demonstration here. Let's do a division. So we'll do 355. We'll divide by 113, which you use 112 on the small digits. So I think I explained this before, but you look at the number to the left of you, that's a 0, so we do nothing. Then we keep entering this while the number we're holding, 113, essentially, is less than the number below us. So, and move over, got a 0, so we do nothing, or larger. Got a 0, so we do nothing. And got a 0. And got a 0. Alright, now we got a 1 there, so we hit it once. It's still a 1, so the number of times we hit it, 1 matches that number, so now we go on and keep going until we are less than that number below us. And there we go, 3.14159, and then that's our remainder down here. So yeah, that time clearing worked fine. I have noticed that as I play around with this, that carry chip down there that was getting stuck seems to have started behaving now, so I'm not quite sure what the deal was with that. It wouldn't be like, grease or anything, because like I said, I rebuilt this entire register, so not quite sure what the deal is there. But anyway, get a little down view here. Like I said, this doesn't match exactly, but I'm okay with that. And I'll show you why in a minute. The side here, the camera's collapsing. There is a bit of cracked paint back there, but like I said, that's perfectly fine. It makes it look old, which is okay. I'd rather have it look old than look freshly repainted. So yeah, I'm going to be okay with this, I think. Like I said, I just have to adjust a few small things. I might try and think of something to better hold those small rivets in, because you can see how these don't line up now because they don't. That does kind of bother me a little bit. So I'll see about thinking about something about that to hold those in properly. I might do what I was thinking about and get, pieces of lead and make lead rivets out of there, because they don't have to be, super strong or anything. They're just going to hold that that cork backing on, and ideally you can even get rid of that cork backing if you really wanted to, and just have the rivets there to act as stops for these. So I'll have to think about that. I'll have to think about the register cover, and I'll have to see if I can find some springs to put in the register. And this bothers me too, but I don't know what to do about it. You will never find spare keys for these, because these composite key stems are only used on the models A, B, and C, which were not super high production. Model C Lite is somewhat higher production. You find those from time to time, but they use the later style keys. So yeah, and of course they used this style key on the wood models too, but they had a different key stem, and of course you'd never put out a wood model. No matter how good a wood model is, you never put those out, because those are pretty rare. So yeah, I don't know what to do about that. It's incredibly unlikely I would find a parts machine with these style key stems, but I guess you could try and recast it, but matching this material is going to be hard, I think. So you're not too sure what to do about that, but yeah. Anyway, I'm going to be happy with it. So I guess that's really all that matters. So there it is, the wood model made from 1887 to 1903. Then the Model A made from 1904 to 1906, and then the Model B 1906 to 1909. This one is probably the best original condition comptometer probably that I've ever seen, really. There's basically no rust on it. The keys are in excellent condition for these composite style keycaps. You can see how much wider they are compared to the Model A. And I didn't even clean these, they just came that way. So the lacquer is worn off of here a little bit. It's actually worn down here right through to the metal underneath. But overall, this one is in very good shape, this Model B. And as you can see, this doesn't quite match that either, so that's why I'm okay with this mismatch here. I think it'll be fine. Yeah, these are probably the three rarest comptometers, actually. Maybe the Model E is rarer than these ones. These ones do come up from time to time on eBay, actually. Yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.